Good morning. This is Teresa Dotson, registered dietitian, showing you some of my superpowers at work. So some of my favorite ingredients to use are pumpkin, which I actually have pureed pumpkin from pumpkins that I cut up, baked and cut up. But you can buy pumpkin in a can. And pumpkin is one of those foods that we call nutrient rich, or in some cases people call it nutrient dense, your preference. But I like it because it is a great source of some extra iron, calcium, and potassium, things that we are often lacking in the traditional American diet, and especially important for women. It has some fiber, and what it doesn't list is it's very high in vitamin A. So pumpkin is a great superfood and way to add nutrition to your recipes. The original recipe calls for eggs, but I have to say right now, one of the most questions that I'm asked is about eggs in relation to the cost, but also some people struggle with eggs as an allergy. So you can buy an egg replacer such as this, that is, all you have to do is add water. If you're looking for a vegan egg replacer, a great one is to combine flaxseed meal. It has to be ground in order to absorb the liquid and in order to be absorbed. And the flaxseed, again, brings with it the calcium, the iron, the potassium, the fiber, which are things that you wouldn't necessarily get from traditional eggs. I would recommend doing it and using an electric mixer. I happen to have a stand-up KitchenAid, but even if you don't, if you mix them really well, that helps with giving you the consistency of eggs when you're making your batter. Some of the other things that you might want to use to add a little bit of nutrition or nutrition density is brown sugar versus white sugar and molasses. A molasses is another one of those things that you can use to add some nutrition. It is a source of many trace minerals, calcium, and iron. Another question I get a lot about is the benefits of things like cinnamon or ginger or things like that. What I say, my go-to is pumpkin pie spice, and it does have cinnamon, nutmeg, allspice, ginger, and cloves all in one container, so that's easy to use. Another great way to add some flavor is using some baking cocoa, which if you look at the baking cocoa itself, it's just pure cocoa, so no added sugar, no added fat. It does have a little bit of fiber, and again, look at the iron that you get. So it's another way to add flavor, a little bit extra iron and fiber to your recipes. In relation to food allergies, oftentimes what I will do, in keeping with the line of pumpkins, is I will use pepitas, which are pumpkin seeds, and you can see here, you can just grind them up to be the consistency of nuts, and a serving is only 120 calories versus walnuts, where a serving is 190 calories. Still gives you that fiber and healthy omega-3 fatty acids, but with the whole nut allergy, a lot of people avoid nuts. So the pepitas or the pumpkin seeds are a good substitute for nuts. A lot of times people will ask me about nuts, and aren't nuts healthy? Yes, they're healthy when you swap them for other animal protein sources. They're not healthy when you just sprinkle them on top of a bad diet. So, and they are very calorie dense in addition to being nutrient dense. So the other big allergy, especially when it comes to baking, is gluten and gluten-free. So I have the gluten-free baking flour, which is great. It's easy, 1-to-1, no math required, no substitutions. It's great, except when you look at the backside, it has hardly any fiber. It's mostly refined grains. So it would be equivalent to white flour, and not a whole lot in terms of nutrition. However, you can achieve the same thing with just using rolled oats, which are naturally a whole grain, naturally gluten-free, and all you have to do is put them into the food processor and they become the consistency of flour. I mean, you can leave them chunky like this and you'll just get a heavier, denser muffin versus a lighter, fluffy muffin. The other thing in terms of milk and dairy is a lot of recipes will call for milk or dairy. If you choose to use a plant-based milk, that's great. If you need to avoid dairy because of an allergy. But just know from a nutritional point of view that any plant-based milk, in order to be nutritionally equivalent to milk, has to be fortified, meaning added a lot of vitamins and minerals. So on the front of the label, when it says, you know, a good source of calcium, it's because they add the calcium. You can see right here, calcium carbonate is added to it. So it's not naturally occurring. So if you have a food allergy, totally makes sense to have a plant-based. If you're a vegan, for whatever the reason, I can understand plant-based. But in terms of nutrition, the plant-based milks are not as nutritious or nutrient dense as milk. This one I happen to like because it is a dark chocolate, but it's a dark chocolate milk, oat milk versus a creamer. And the creamers a lot of times will be high in fat and sugar, not necessarily the nutrition of milk. So all of these ingredients are going to go into my heart healthy pumpkin muffins that are going to be gluten-free, vegan, egg and dairy-free, nut-free, and I will post the recipe online as well. Have a healthy day and enjoy the rest of March, National Nutrition Month. This is Teresa Dotson, registered dietitian and owner of Nutrition Solutions for Life.